this. Great. Today I'm speaking with Gary Spittle. Gary is the founder and CEO of Sonical. And Sonical is a company building what may be the operating system for the next era of personal computing. So it's not on your phone, it's actually in your ear. And Gary spent 30 years at the frontier of audio and semiconductor technology at Cambridge Silicon Radio, which pioneered Bluetooth, through the Qualcomm acquisition across Knowles, Dolby, and Personic in Silicon Valley. Then he made a decision that this conversation is partly about, which is to leave a well-established path and build a category that didn't fully exist yet. What I'm interested in today isn't really the technology, it's the interior of that decision and the decisions that have followed. What it feels to lead with a conviction the market hasn't really caught up to yet, how clarity holds or doesn't when the signals from the outside are mixed. That's what the In the Inquiry is built for. So, Gary, welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Before I ask the first question, the format here is simple. I ask, you talk, no right answers. Take whatever time you need. Ready?
Love it. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So you spent 30 years in audio and semiconductor technology, and at some point, you made a decision to leave a well-established path at Qualcomm and build something that didn't fully exist yet. I want to start there, not with what Sonical is, but with what that decision felt like. What was actually happening inside you when you made that call?
Um, well, specifically on that transition, there were a couple of things happening. One was I had been approached by another company, and I had the opportunity to move to California, which was obviously something very attractive. But I also had reached a point where the business that we were running within Qualcomm and CSR at the time, it was really at its limit. I mean, we were the number one in the world. We were shipping lots of product. We were doing some interesting things, but we'd really hit the limit of what was coming next. And so I just wanted to try something new. And these things came together. I was noticed at a conference where I presented a paper on how people hear, and the opportunity to move to California and work for Dolby came up, so I took it.
So when you described that moment, was it a clear decision or a heavy one? Did you know or did you hope?
Oh no, not at all. It was completely unexpected, and it involved, a move most of the way around the world to California from England. And so, yeah, we had to give it a lot of decision time, and we actually came and visited California as a family to make sure we were making the right choices. It wasn't an easy step, and it was definitely not planned. But the way we saw it at that time is we should take the opportunity, make the most of it, and see where it might take us. And that was 15 years ago.
Hmm. So most people in your position at that point in the career, after a major acquisition with credibility and options, would have taken a safer path. So what made it feel like the right time to bet on something that didn't exist yet?
Um, I've always liked the fact that we can use technology to enhance a certain situation, or more importantly, how to help people. And the position that was being created within Dolby was really all about that. It was a completely new business unit within the company. It was focused on a new technology area. It was really pushing the limits of signal processing at the time. And so it just seemed like an interesting thing to get in early and see where we can take it. And that was really the same journey I went on, back with CSR. Bluetooth was very early in terms of audio and how it could be used for wireless audio streaming. And so it was an opportunity to do that as well. And when I moved to CSR, that was from a a very stable, well-established position in a big company at the same time.
Mhm.
So I've always been more interested in helping people with technology rather than just being stable.
Got it. So you've described the ear as kind of the next frontier for personal computing. So that's a conviction that runs ahead of where the market is. How do you
Right.
lead a team and attract investment around a vision the world hasn't caught up to yet? I mean, what does that do to decision making when the signals from the outside are mixed?
Yeah, well, that's really tough. I mean, that's the most difficult thing that we've had to deal with from when we started the company. And there's a great saying that some people use in category design that you want to go after a $0 billion market rather than try and compete in an existing, well established space. Um, the whole job of the founder is to have a vision of a future that doesn't exist yet and then come back to the present day and try and build whatever you need to make that vision happen. And that's what we've been doing around ear computers. um, we noticed that there's a very large population that simply don't have access to essential hearing technology today, with existing products, with existing tech. And there's another group of people that know how to deliver on those needs and how to create that technology. And we found an opportunity to join them together. And that's exactly what a hearing computer does. It takes the world's most advanced hearing technology that's out there and delivers it to the person that needs it.
Hmm. So was there a moment where you doubted the conviction, where, the environmental noise, investor skepticism, or market timing, competitive pressure started to feel louder than your own read on where this was going?
Oh, absolutely. There's always moments of, self doubt and feeling of that you're just not worthy to be doing this, or
Hmm.
reconsidering the direction you're taking. That happens all the time. And so, one way that we try and deal with that is we surround ourselves with people that do have conviction about what we're doing and they see the benefit and they can help us on the journey. But most of the people you speak to can't see this. They live in today's world, they see the limitations we have and the products that are available, and they just can't see how something different could be done, especially in a slow moving space like hearing. I mean, we've literally had the same products for about 50 years. They've barely changed. Okay, they've become, digital, or they've become powered and they've got DSPs in them, but that's basically it. The same functionality exists. In one area we make sound louder, and in the other area we deliver sound to your ear, and that's pretty much it. So it's a massive opportunity if you stop thinking that way and think about the situation as a computing platform.
Hmm. Well, Sonical's building an operating system and an ecosystem for hearables. And
Right.
so that requires alignment across chip design, software, developer partners, hardware manufacturers. How do you make sure the vision you're carrying as a founder is the same vision your team is executing against? In your experience, where does that gap open up?
Well, I think you've nailed the biggest technology challenge that we face. So, and this isn't new. The same thing happened with personal computers, where Windows is the dominant operating system. It's happened in mobile and consumer devices where Android is currently the dominant player. um, they have exactly the same challenge. They have to bring together the technology providers, the chipsets, and all of the components that live in a device. They have to go to the product makers and convince them to move to their platform. You have to create an ecosystem of developers to write software for your operating system.
Mhm.
And then you've got to convince the end user that once you've done all that, it's worth buying the end result. And it's no different for us. There's no one angle that we can do in isolation. We have to do all of them. We have to work with chip companies. We've got a massive ecosystem of software developers. We're working with product makers. And ultimately, we want to make sure the end user gets the tech they need. So it is very, very tough.
So you've been in large organizations. You had there was Cambridge, Silicon Radio, Qualcomm, and now you're running your own. So when you were inside those larger structures, how did decisions change as they moved through the organization? Did the strategy that left the top arrive at execution intact?
I think the best examples are probably within CSR because it went through a number of iterations and grew massively, and also to some extent with Dolby. In both instances, the the real positive time came when the team were able to work in a fairly self-contained unit. So, for example, um, the early days of CSR, there was a lot of focus on mobile phones, obviously.
Mhm.
And when the audio group became an interesting element of that business, it was put into its own business unit. And then we could really move. We didn't have to have any influence on any of the other parts of the company. We could really focus on audio. And that's where we really saw the most traction. But you go through these iterations, and there's different reorgs and different structuring, but ultimately you need to keep people focused on their one area, and let them do their job. And the people that were running the business unit at the time were very good at that at CSR, which is why it became so successful. They were just focused on audio.
Right. So as a founder, you have a different kind of pressure, right? So you're not just the decision maker, you're the signal source for the entire organization. So what do you do when you feel the signal getting muddy, when, the team is executing against the version of the vision that's drifted slightly from the original?
Yeah, that is tough. So the first thing we have to do is we have to say no to a lot of things. I mean, there's a huge list of things that we could do and we might be interested in doing, but we have to say no to most of it. We've got to keep within our lane and make sure that we're working on the tasks that get us to where we need to be next. And that's sometimes really tough because there could be an exciting project that comes in that somebody wants you to build, and we have the skills to do it, but it's a massive distraction. The other thing is you have to base it on the journey. So we know where we want to get to. We don't know what the path will be, and we know it's going to be bumpy and things are going to get in the way. But as long as these decisions are based on getting to that end goal, then most of the time it feels like you're doing the right thing.
Hmm. So what's the most expensive misalignment you've navigated? Not in terms of money, but in time, momentum, or organizational energy.
So one of the things that when we look back on was a large drain of our time and energy is selecting the right target customers. Um, and I naively thought that having worked in this industry for many years and built up a very strong network of people, that we could convince product makers to put our technology into their devices without too much trouble. Um, and we were taken down many, many paths with product makers that, in hindsight, had no interest in developing with us. They simply wanted to know what we were doing, and at the end of it, they wanted it all for free. Um, and so you end up in a situation where you're kind of drawn into their brand and their presence in the market. But we should have been stronger and said, no, we're not going to waste our time with that. And that happened a couple of times, and now we're much better figuring this out sooner, so we don't do that
Hmm.
again.
So you've been in this category for what, over 5 years now. Um, the technology has been right. The timing has been difficult. What does sustained conviction look like from the inside when the market keeps making you wait?
It all comes back to the end users. We are working with groups of people who still don't have help for the condition they have. And so, take something like tinnitus. Tinnitus is this ringing in the ears. It's a condition that I have, and there are still very limited options for people. And tinnitus isn't just one condition that somebody's going to solve and everybody's going to miraculously be cured. There's going to be various different technologies and products and therapies that help, and we just want to be a part of that. And so, yeah, it's been frustrating because I myself want to get some help, but by working with the right people and having those end users as your guide, it's enough to keep you motivated to keep going. And yes, the technology's taken time. Things always take longer than you expect. Things are always more expensive than you expect. But by having these large groups of people where you can help them eventually, that
Mm,
keeps us going.
wow. So there's a specific experience that founders describe, where the clarity about the destination is high, but the clarity about the path keeps shifting. Is that where you live? And how do you lead from that place?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's with you the whole journey because you have an idea about the path you need to take, but that's not always what happens. And so, I mean, an example of that for us is we set on this journey to build some technology and license it to a product maker. And that has now become just one piece of what we do. It's an important piece, but to help move the market faster, we now find ourselves that we have to build a lot more hardware, which was not part of the original plan. And so to get to our destination, it's an essential piece that we need hardware that we can provide to people. We can use it as a tool to learn from. It's a place for the developers to put their technology and get it into the market and get early feedback. And by having that, we can now move a lot faster. But that was a huge piece of work that required additional resources, and it wasn't in our initial plan. And so these things happen all the time. Even like today, we're talking to potential technology suppliers into us that were not part of our original business model. We didn't know that this was going to be an essential piece, but it has become that way. The most important thing that we do is we listen to all of these signals coming in, and then we use that information to decide what we have to do next.
Hmm. So what do you protect most fiercely as a leader right now? Not in terms of the IP or competitive position, but internally. What do you work hardest to keep intact?
It's making sure that we're all working in our very small team on the most essential pieces of work. Um, it's really easy to get distracted by the latest shiny thing that comes in, um, and there's a risk that things never get complete. Fortunately, our team, we're all very experienced people, and we've been through this many times, but we still have to make sure that we're all doing the essential work. Um, so that's really what I'm focused on.
Hmm. So has there been a moment in building Sonical where you had to override your own first read on something and were right to, and a moment where you overrode it and weren't?
Um, hmm. I think there's lots of examples where, again, you look back and you think, well, we probably shouldn't have done that. um, so, yeah, I think there's been some technologies that early on we wanted to adopt, um, and it wasn't as mature as we thought. So, a lot of the EEG brain sensing technology that we see as another really exciting piece to add to what we do. And there are some amazing partners that we're working with that can do that. We probably looked at that far too early. These companies weren't ready, the technology wasn't there, and what it could do was very primitive. But I got distracted by that because I could see the benefits that it will ultimately bring to people. But we didn't have, a 5 to 8 year runway that would allow us to wait for the technology to catch up. We had to go and do something that was available pretty much now. And so you've got this concept of, what is possible today and what is currently impossible. And you've got to find that fine line that's, just on the boundary and deliver what is just about possible and bring that in. And that's a whole concept around, creating a category that people like Kevin Maney and Mike Damhouse go on about. It's finding that very thin line, and so it's a surprise to people that you've been able to do it, but it's not so far out in the future that it takes you years to get there.
Hmm. So looking back across that arc, Symbionics, CSR, the APT-X acquisition,
Mm.
Qualcomm, Knowles, Dolby, and now Sonical. What decision would you most want to revisit? Not to change it necessarily, just to understand it better.
Um, the one that still baffles me now is, um, during the time as a consultant at Symbionics, which then became Tality. I worked with a very large Finnish mobile phone company called Nokia,
Mm,
and we were developing an operating system for phones, um, and it was the Symbian OS, and we were developing all kinds of applications for it. And so at the time, we thought this was going to be the next big thing, and obviously we were working with the leader in that space. And it's interesting how that didn't turn out the way that everyone thought it would. Um, so yeah, that's something that, the decisions around that, you look back and you think it's weird how that wasn't more successful.
hmm. So, I mean, you've been through major acquisitions from the inside. So you had the APT-X in Belfast, CSR to Qualcomm. What happens to decision making inside an organization going through that kind of structural change? What gets clearer and what gets harder to see?
Um, I think the biggest problem is understanding your relevance. You go from a position that has most likely created something that's very attractive, which is why you got acquired, or it's why you are acquiring some new technology. And then very quickly, you are a lot less relevant because you're part of a different organization. Um, and that relevance, it can be quite damaging. You end up developing things in a completely different way, perhaps for different customers or even different products, which wasn't what you set out to do. The APTX thing is a good example. That technology grew up in pro audio and radio and streaming systems. And then all of a sudden, it's found in consumer headphones. And it was brilliant, but it wasn't quite what everyone set out to do. And so you've got to balance that. It's difficult to just take something and repurpose it somewhere else and expect everyone to just go along and be happy with it.
Mhm. So if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice at the moment you decided to found Sonical, not about the technology or the market, but about how to lead through what was coming, what would it be?
Um, Find people sooner. Um, Without question, the learning experience of working with a great team around me, we should have done that much sooner. Um, we naively thought that what we could do as a small group, was going to take us much further, and it took me a long time to realize that I needed a lot of help around me, advisors or supporters or just people that are, um, able to make other connections for us. Um, when I set out on Sonical, I thought my network of people was going to be enough, but most of the people that came from that world are just not relevant to what we do now. So we've
Mm,
had to go and build a whole new network of connections. The people that are helping us now, more than half of them are completely new people that I've met on the journey. And so if I was to go back, it was to tell myself, go and find those people much sooner. And there's a great book on this. Yeah, I think it's called Who Not How.
Mhm.
um, where they really encourage you to figure out who can you connect with to help you do something rather than trying to figure it out yourself. And I didn't do that soon enough.
Got it. So I have a last question for you. It's the one I asked every one of my guests. It's, what's a question you think leaders in your position almost never get asked that you wish someone would ask?
Oh, how are you doing? Nobody asks you how you're doing. They ask you how the business is doing. They ask how the team's doing. They ask about customers, meetings. Very, very few people ask how you are doing, like genuinely, so you can just open up to them and tell them exactly what's happening. And fortunately, there's a few people that I'm very close with that are able to handle that. And, we can go through all the ugly stuff together.
Mhm.
That is so important. Um, Having gone through this journey now, I completely appreciate what all the other founders are having to deal with, and what we put out into the world, is the shiny 1%, and behind this is a lot of pain. And so most people never get to talk to someone about that. And some of the founder meets that we have here in the Bay Area are very good at that, where you can just sit down and let it all out, and then you find out actually everyone's going through the same thing.
Uh,
We're not alone here, and that helps.
That's brilliant. Gary, this has been exactly the kind of conversation in the inquiry was built for. So
Excellent.
I want to thank you for being willing to sit inside these questions with me. And I also want to thank the audience. In the interim, stay in the inquiry. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks very much.